Hello, everybody. The Nameless Narcissist here once again. A simple man diagnosed with NPD, talking about pathological narcissism and trying to explain what goes on in my head. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on Twitch, Twitter. No, I'm not on Twitch. Why did I say Twitch? Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Jesus. Keep in mind, I am no clinician, so I can only speak to my own experiences. But, I read a lot, so I still know what I'm talking about. Okay, so what happens when two narcissists date? So there's been a couple of very interesting studies on this, actually, like regarding people who are pathologically narcissistic or just subclinical narcissism that actually get along better in relationships than if they were in a relationship with a healthy person, which under the conditions that neither of them threatened each other's grandiosity. So they'll both be like, oh man, you're the best thing in the world. Oh, you're the best thing in the world. Oh, we're the best couple in the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because they're both kind of propping each other up like that, which, sounds like a good relationship to me. But now I'm going to talk about my experience dating another narcissist, but I have only dated narcissists who are self-aware. So I cannot speak to the ones that are just going around everywhere doing their thing. Oh, hold on. Just doing their thing with no sort of insight into their behavior. So this was actually after I started accepting my diagnosis. This was pretty soon after that. I met this girl who was also pathologically narcissistic, or at least she suspected that she was. She wasn't diagnosed. Also, I didn't actually end up dating her. Me and her, we were effectively in a relationship, you know how that goes. But we were not official at any point during it. So at the beginning I met her, and it was interesting because we were both pathologically narcissistic, but she was from a much lower class than I am. And I would always emphasize my I am a proper gentleman, not gentleman as in oh, I'm good to women, but gentleman as in nobility, I guess you could say. And while she took a lot of pride in being oh, I am lower class, that's fighting my way through college and stuff. The funny thing is I'm not rich or anything. I just like presenting myself as aristocratic. But so we started talking just because and just as friends at this point, just because you don't meet other self-aware narcissists very often. It was pretty interesting being able to, for the first time, be oh yeah, this is how you were, blah blah blah. We didn't get into super deep discussions about how we thought and stuff, especially since my insight wasn't nearly as good back then as it is now. I we'd be able to soothe each other in a very surprisingly well way, just because we knew what we wanted to hear. She did have some peculiarities about her though that I didn't relate to. I suspect she has some I honestly think she has more borderline stuff than she thinks. Especially her unstable sense of self was way worse than mine. She was like, "What if I have DID?" I was like, "No, you don't. It's really different." So I feel like a different person. So yeah, identity disturbance. That's just identity disturbance. Stupid bitch. No, not actually. She was pretty smart. She brought me to this party early on, which was in the middle of a hick town. It was weird. And during it, she took somebody's necklace or something. I don't remember why. And then someone was like, "You get it from her?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I walk over to her and she kicks. I'm like, "Come on, you gotta give that to me." And then she kicks the back of my leg and actually brings me to the ground. Which I was like, "Wow, that's never happened before." So I swept her legs and got the necklace from her. That'll show her. So the relationship started out with domestic violence. It was all in good fun. It wasn't we were fucking beating each other or anything. But after that, we slowly got closer. Her best friend was like, "Oh, go and kiss her." And I was like, "Who are you? I don't even know you. This is the first night I met you." Eventually, how she initiated the relationship was by sending me one of those studies that was "Oh, narcissists are attracted to each other," and being "Oh, this makes me wonder if the reason why I want to kiss you is because you're pretty or because of this." And I was like, "Wow, that was a very forward way of going about this, and probably the best way ever to get me to invest in somebody." After that, we just kind of, did things together, normal couple things. It wasn't very, it was interesting because I've talked about how I will eventually just start questioning oh, what if this isn't the perfect person for me? What if there's somebody better out there for me? And per usual, that started happening. And I started getting a little bit more distant. Not distant. I would say I got a little bit more irritable. Because I was just kind of like, I don't know, like she just started to annoy me in certain ways. But then, once, I think she eventually picked up on that, because once I started doing that, I felt her start to withdraw. And that's when I was like, oh wait, no wait, I need this person. And Kirk Honda, I've been mentioning him so much lately, actually talked about how two narcissists in a relationship, one will revert more to like a borderline stance. And that's kind of what happened to me, if I'm being honest, which is fucking embarrassing, Jesus. I started getting like, not clingy, but I started getting like way more paranoid about like how it was going, because I could feel her withdrawing. But like she gave me, towards the beginning, she gave me like so many assurances, like, oh, you can trust me, you can be the real you around me. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And she would talk about unmasking, and I was like, bitch, I am a mask. I don't know what you're talking about. It always confused, because I get masking in terms of like hiding a lot of my symptoms, but like I always feel like I'm performing no matter what. So it's like, I don't get when certain people with NPD talk about unmasking unless it's just like hiding like grandiosity and stuff. And she didn't have that. Her identity disturbance was way more borderline than mine. So I could start feeling her pull away. And usually at this point, I'd be like, all right, done. Cut you off before you can leave me, right? But like, because she gave me all those assurances, I was like, oh, maybe she is just going through weird things, whatever. And it was a slow process. Like, it started with like us not having sex anymore, like me not getting to see her as much, blah, blah, blah. And like, keep going. And then like, eventually she wanted to come to my fucking mom's Thanksgiving. Well, my mom's boyfriend's Thanksgiving. So I was like, okay, and she invited me to her mom's. And I was like, oh, well, okay, like, things must be fine. And she was all like touchy with me during that. And I'm like, bitch, I don't like PDA. Fucking stop. This is embarrassing. Embarrassing. And she would dress all like grunge. And I was like, okay, can you like have some class? God damn it. No, I'm just joking. I didn't like say, I wasn't that mean to her or anything. Again, I really did like her during the course of most of the relationship. There was one night that like went really bad, so she had this thing where it felt like she wanted so bad to be hard, right? She wanted to be like this bad bitch so bad. She's like, I stole this from Walmart. I'm like, you stole paint. Like, this isn't impressive. This isn't behavior that like makes you impressive. I wouldn't say that. Once we went to a restaurant, and I was like, man, I need new silverware. And like, we get into the car, and she's like, here, I got this for you. And it was fucking some of that silverware that she stole from it. I'm like, aw, that's so sweet. Anyways, it was funny. But yeah, time wore on. There was one really bad night where like, I got just really in my head about something. And I was like sitting outside my sister's pedophile boyfriend's house being like, I'm gonna fucking murder him. And she like had to talk me down. And I was like, that wasn't the best move. That may have contributed to how this relationship went. Not a good time. After that, just got worse and worse. And one day she just started ignoring me. And I was like, I mean, like, it wasn't like it's not like it was like a build up to the point of ignoring. It was like we were still talking basically every day, and then just basically radio silence of her being like, oh, I have things going on. And like, I checked in like once a day, which I think is reasonable. And when she didn't reply on the third day, I was like, fuck this. I have an idea. And so without telling anybody, I fled to DC. I've mentioned this story before. From my small Ohio Rust Belt town, city. I fucking drove the 5-hour drive to Washington, D.C., stopped in Annapolis to see a friend there, went to D.C., and I was like, hey, blank, one of my friends from high school, I was like, hey, can I stay with you by any chance? And she's like, oh, hell yeah, blah, blah. And so now that I haven't told anybody I was in D.C., I haven't told her, I take a picture with the girl that I'm staying with. I'm not like sleeping with her or anything, but take a picture, just send it to her. No, I didn't send it to her. I put it on my story. And she was like, wait, what the fuck are you doing in D.C., blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why do you care? It worked. It worked. She started texting me a lot after that. Woke up the next day to 8 messages. I was like, haha, worked. And it wasn't even like, she wasn't even like addressing the fact that I fled. I'm like, man, people can't abandon me if they don't know where I am. So then I go back, and I like, I basically texted her, I was like, hey, like, I'm about to drive home, love to have a phone call. Fucking ignores me again, fucking bitch. And then eventually she does call me, and she's like, basically like, oh, like, we should go back to being friends first. And I was like, no, this isn't how this fucking works. If we aren't together, like, I'm not a kind of guy that I'm gonna fucking go like a simp and wait around for you to decide that you're ready to date me. No, it's either now or, like, as long as it's like, oh, we have already been in a romantic relationship, I guess. I'm not going to just sit around and wait for you. I've been through that shit before. I did that once, and that was with a borderline. And, like, fucking sorry, but sorry, I will only do crazy shit for a borderline. And so, like, we have a very long emotional conversation. Like, she's like, oh, you have to believe that, like, I'm not doing, I really think you're amazing and want to date you. I just, like, it's weird having feelings. I need to figure that shit out first. And in the moment, I was like, I believe you now. I probably won't later. And fucking that was correct. To this day, I think she was fucking lying to me and thought that I wasn't good enough. Or she was envious of my intelligence because she would always say that I was so much smarter than her because I was and still am. I'm a genius. But yeah, it was, and then I was very broken up over. It was probably the most healthy relationship I ever had. And the one one of the ones I was most distraught over. Then, like, I turned into a mess for a little bit after that. And, like, I spent those 2 days in my splendid isolation where I hid from my shame. Pathetic, honestly. I can't believe, like, I was that torn up over her. I could have done so much better. I will do so much better once I actually start dating again. But, like, it was, it did, like, make me it kind of solidified this belief in my head. And I'm like, I think one of the only ways I'm going to be happy in a relationship, if it is with, like, another narcissist or with another cluster B in general. Well, actually, I was going to say other narcissists I couldn't deal being in a relationship with a borderline, histrionic, or antisocial personality disorder scares me. So, yeah, and I mean, to this day, I'm like, I kind of have regrets about how that went down. I still would never have fucking just waited for her like that. No, I don't fucking do that. I'm not going to be paraded around as a trophy of, like, the man whose heart she broke, right? Maybe it's just karma, you know. I did that to the girl so many times that God's like, all right, your turn. I'm like, fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. Then not much else to talk about. So I'm in my head about it now. Jesus, just thinking about it. I hate when, like, I start thinking about things because of this channel. I'm like, oh, right, that was actually kind of painful, and I've shoved all it down and forgot about it. But nah, fuck her. I don't need that. I do not need that. I don't need to be a simp for anybody. Anyways, hope you all have a good day. Take your fucking meds.